Tape's effect on goggle leakage. Background to the experiment. I am a swimmer and found problems with the equipment, especially goggles. Goggles leak a lot and I wanted to fix that. About the experiment. I asked the question, how does tape affect goggle leakage? I wanted to see if sewing tape would prevent goggles from leaking. Research. Goggles can be fixed by boiling and remolding them. This can cause them to break. Certain gels have been made to prevent goggle leakage. I believe that it would be easier to use tape. Hypothesis. Goggles will leak less with larger amounts of tape are applied. Variables. Dependent variable. The amount of time it takes for the goggles to leak. I tested the goggles 5 different ways. Control and 4 different tape lengths. Independent variable. The amount of tape applied to the goggles. Exact measurements were made for 4 pieces of tape at each tape length. Control variable. Goggle straps were always the same length and were tested with the same amount of movement and pressure. I followed a routine and dived to a certain depth in the pool. Procedure. Steps 1 through 3, I wore goggles and jumped in the pool. During steps 4 through 6, I started the stopwatch, dived 10 feet, squinted 3 times, and came up to the surface. During steps 7 through 9, I repeated steps 1 through 7 until goggles leaked. Time was recorded. Steps 1 through 9 I repeated for a max of 1 minute unless leakage occurred sooner. During steps 10 through 11, I repeated steps 1 through 9 30 times. Next, 4 pieces of 3 cm tape were placed on the goggles. During steps 12 through 14, steps 3 through 9 were repeated 30 times. I then repeated steps 3 through 9 with 4, 5, and 6 cm tapes 30 times each. Data. Here's my data table. Each column is labeled, 1 for control and the rest for tape lengths in centimeters. At the bottom are the averages and the standard deviation. Graph. The y-axis shows the average time in seconds. The x-axis shows the length of tape in centimeters. The error bar represents the standard deviation. Observations. The bigger pieces of tape were harder to get off, but also adhered to the goggles the best. The control and 3 cm trials didn't have very different averages. Most of the data within the trial was spread out. For example, in the control trial, the goggles leak within 11 and 18 seconds, so I added the standard deviation. Conclusion. The data supports my hypothesis. The tape length affects goggle leakage. The larger amounts of tape prevent the goggles from having leaks.